All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to double upload today because I am stalling doing my homework. So, we're going to talk about more NFL news that happened today, as recently as yesterday, as actually. The Browns have made a trade for Jets wide receiver Elijah Moore. It has come out that they are going to be giving up a third. I'm sorry, they're going to be giving up a second for Elijah Moore and a third round pick to the New York Jets, who recently just signed Alan Lazard and Miko Hardman in free agency. Also, are trying to lure away Aaron Rodgers from Green Bay. So maybe does this trade give them more capital to do so? We're going to talk about the trade, and we are going to kind of say what I think it means for both teams. But before we do that, please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and comment what you think down below. Now, starting for the Browns, starting with Elijah Moore. If you guys remember, he came out of Ole Miss, was regarded as one of the best route runners in his draft class, and has really been not so productive in New York thus far. Now, there was the whole thing last year where he apparently got into altercations with the Jets. He wanted out. He was, not getting along. And quite honestly, if my quarterback was Zach Wilson, I would probably feel the exact same way. I think that at first it kind of was seen as a temper tantrum, and then as the season went on and their quarterback play got worse and worse somehow, the general public really started to sympathize with Elijah Moore and say, yeah, get him the fuck out of New York. But with the developments of this last offseason, with Aaron Rodgers potentially going to the Jets, a lot of people thought, hey, Elijah Moore will finally have a quarterback. Like, they'll see what we have in him, et cetera, et cetera. No, they shipped his ass out. They shipped him to Cleveland. Who Cleveland? If you're Cleveland, you're trying to provide every weapon possible to Deshaun Watson, who really, really struggled last year. But before his whole, let's call them issues off the field, was one of the NFL's best quarterbacks. So definitely has potential to bounce back. But looking at the Browns, I mean, they got Amari Cooper for a fifth, who was really good. They have now Elijah Moore. And they still have Nick Chubb obviously running the rock. So some good weapons. I think Elijah Moore is going to have a chance to finally play with a really good quarterback, which obviously he hasn't had in New York. So if the Browns really only give up a second round pick for a really good receiver, um, they're getting Elijah Moore and a third back, so it's a pretty good trade. They're really not getting they're moving down in the draft just a little bit and getting a pretty good receiver who's going to start for them. So I think this is a really good trade for the Browns, who have gotten excellent value for their wide receivers up until this point. And like I said, if he's the great route runner, good hands receiver that we thought he was coming out of the draft, I think this is a good move. And for the Jets, to get our second round pick back, or to move up in the draft, trading away a guy who you had issues with last year, and a guy who is kind of buried on your depth chart after Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, and what was I just talking about? Miko Hardman. It's a good trade. I do think that this plays into the hand of the Aaron Rodgers deal. I do think that adding capital could only increase their chances of landing Aaron Rodgers, because as it's been reported and as I've been saying, I think the Packers want a first round pick for Aaron Rodgers, and I don't know if the Jets want to give that up. But now that they have a couple seconds to play with, maybe they throw in a couple twos instead. Maybe they do a two and a player. They have more flexibility now with higher draft capital to go get Aaron Rodgers. So expect that Aaron Rodgers trade to happen with at least one of these second round picks, one of the ones they have. I believe now they have 51 and 53, if I'm not mistaken. My math could be wrong, but that's the kind of draft capital they have. So good for the Browns getting a good receiver, barely moving down the draft. Good for the Jets for kind of getting rid of an unwanted asset or an unneeded asset in an attempt to trade up and get Aaron Rodgers. Adam Schefter said that this really had nothing to do with the Aaron Rodgers trade. He doesn't think. I don't think it could hurt the Aaron Rodgers trade at all. I think that if anything, it just helps out the leverage, or I'm sorry, just helps out the capital that the Jets have. But if the trade has nothing to do with Aaron, if this trade has no bearing on it, at the end of the day, you moved up in the draft, you got rid of a guy who's going to be your third or fourth wide receiver. So I still think that's a good trade. So I think this is one of those rare win-win trades for both teams. But what do you guys think down below? Let me know what your thoughts are, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.